ThunderCats was one of the most iconic cartoons of the 1980s. It had bold characters, powerful villains, dramatic music, and a story that felt epic at the time. As kids, we watched it without hesitation and accepted everything it showed us. We never stopped to question the logic or the consequences of what was happening on the screen. Back then, ThunderCats felt simple. Good versus evil, heroes survive, the story moves forward. That was enough. But when you watch ThunderCats again as an adult, the feeling changes. The story feels heavier. Certain moments feel rushed. Some ideas feel uncomfortable in ways they never did before. You start noticing what the show never explained and what it quietly skipped over. There's hidden lore that was never explored. There are storylines that were abandoned without answers. And there are dark implications sitting just beneath the surface of what was meant to be a children's cartoon. Once you start seeing those things, it becomes impossible to ignore them. ThunderCats no longer feels harmless. It feels unsettling. And after this, you'll never see it in the same way again. So if this brings back memories, check the description for the link to the ThunderCats DVD set. Hit like, tap subscribe, click super thanks, and let's revisit the cartoon that should have had an ending, but never did. Section 1. What exactly happened to Thundera?
Thunder! 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 ThunderCats!
ThunderCats begins with one of the darkest openings ever shown in a children's cartoon. The planet Thundera is already dying when the story starts, and within moments it's completely destroyed. The show never slows down to explain what caused this disaster. We're not told if it was a natural collapse, a war, a weapon, or something else entirely. The cause of the planet's end is left unclear, and that silence makes the event feel even more unsettling. The ThunderCats flee their homeworld in a fleet of ships, but almost all of those ships are destroyed during the escape. Only one flagship survives. This means that nearly the entire Thunderian population is wiped out in a very short time. Cities, families, history, and culture disappear almost instantly. Billions of lives are lost, yet the show barely pauses to acknowledge the scale of that loss. What makes this especially eerie is the lack of mourning. The characters do not openly grieve for their planet. They don't talk about lost family members or the pain of watching their world die. There's no period of sadness or trauma shown on screen. Instead, the story moves forward quickly, focusing on survival and the next threat. The ThunderCats land on Third Earth and build a new home. But the emotional weight of what they lost is never fully addressed. The destruction of Thundera becomes background information rather than an ongoing wound. This creates a strange feeling, as if an entire genocide has been brushed aside for the sake of adventure. That leads to a disturbing question the show never answers. Was this genocide? If enemies played a role in Thundera's destruction or the loss of the fleet, then an entire race was erased through violence. If it was natural, why is it treated with so little emotional care? The lack of answers turns Thundera into a haunting memory, one that quietly hangs over the entire series. Section 2. The Age Gap Problem. Liono's Body.
You used it to attack a fellow ThunderCat.
But I didn't know it was Tigra. It was all a trick by Mumm-Ra.
One of the most disturbing ideas in ThunderCats centers on Liono and the way his body and mind do not match. During the journey from Thundera, the ThunderCats are placed in suspension capsules meant to stop aging. For everyone except Liono, the system works as planned. His capsule slows aging instead of stopping it. When the ThunderCats awaken on Third Earth, Liono has the body of a grown adult, but his mind is still that of a 12-year-old child. He looks like a man, but he thinks, reacts, and feels like a boy. This is presented as a heroic challenge, but the deeper implications are unsettling. Liono is expected to lead warriors who are older, wiser, and more experienced than he is. He must make decisions that affect the survival of his people. He carries the Sword of Omens and holds power he does not fully understand. All of this responsibility is placed on someone who never had the chance to grow up naturally. The psychological pressure of this situation is never fully explored. Liono struggles, makes mistakes, and often reacts emotionally. Yet the world around him demands maturity he does not have. He's forced to grow up instantly, without guidance or time to process his loss. The discomfort deepens when romantic tension is hinted at between Liono and Chitara. Physically, they appear close in age. Mentally, they are not equals. The show does not directly confront this issue, but it exists beneath the surface, making modern viewers uneasy. This is something that would never pass in modern animation. Today, the mental and emotional imbalance would be questioned immediately. At the time, it was treated as normal. Looking back, Liono's situation feels less like a fantasy and more like a quiet tragedy hidden inside a children's cartoon. Section 3. Mumm-Ra's true nature was never fully explained.
The ThunderCats will be putty in my hands, and I...
Mumm-Ra is presented as the main villain of ThunderCats, but the show never fully explains what he truly is. On the surface, he appears to be a powerful enemy who wants to destroy the ThunderCats and take the Eye of Thundera. When you look closer, his existence is far darker and more tragic than a simple villain role. Mumm-Ra is not just evil by choice. He's a cursed immortal bound to the ancient spirits of evil. These spirits give him power, but they also control him. He does not act freely. His immortality is not a reward. It's a form of imprisonment. He's kept alive through his sarcophagus and tied to the Black Pyramid, unable to exist normally outside of it. The ancient spirits of evil themselves are never fully explained. We don't know where they came from, who created them, or why they exist. They're described as godlike beings, but their limits suggest they are not all-powerful. Their influence is restricted to certain locations, and they can only act through Mumm-Ra. This makes them feel less like rulers and more like parasites using him as a vessel. Mumm-Ra cannot truly die. When he is defeated, he does not end. He retreats, weakens, and waits. This creates an endless cycle where he is never free from his role. He's not defeated in the traditional sense, he's trapped. Every return means more decay, more struggle, and more servitude. There's also a strong implication that Mumm-Ra is suffering endlessly. His body is decayed, his power comes at a cost. His transformations are painful and unnatural. He exists only to serve forces that never allow him peace or release. The show never addresses this directly, but the implication is clear. Mumm-Ra is not just an enemy to fight. He is a being cursed to exist forever in a state of decay, control, and isolation. That makes him one of the darkest characters ever placed in a children's cartoon. Section 4. The Sword of Omens has disturbing powers.
Collection of tricentennial Thundera $50. My lucky jug of penny.
Maybe you dropped it.
The Sword of Omens is presented as a symbol of justice, leadership, and power, but the show never fully explores its true nature. At first, it seems like a heroic weapon given to Liono to protect his people. Over time, it becomes clear that the sword is far more complex and unsettling. The Sword of Omens does not behave like a normal weapon. It responds on its own. It warns Liono of danger, reveals visions, and activates powers without clear commands. This raises an uncomfortable question. Is the sword sentient? Does it have its own will? Liono does not fully control the sword. In many moments, the sword guides him rather than obeys him. The famous sight beyond sight ability allows Liono to see things beyond his understanding. These visions are not always explained, and Liono does not fully understand what he is being shown. The sword grants power, but it also places a heavy burden on its wielder. Liono is forced to act on knowledge he may not be ready for. He carries responsibility far beyond his age and emotional maturity. The sword does not care that he is still a child mentally. It demands leadership anyway. This creates the unsettling idea that the Sword of Omens may be shaping Liono rather than serving him. Instead of a hero choosing his path, the weapon may be guiding events toward a purpose older than Liono himself. The show never clarifies whether the sword exists to help Liono grow, or whether Liono exists to fulfill the sword's purpose. That uncertainty changes how the weapon feels. It's no longer purely heroic. It becomes something ancient, powerful, and possibly manipulative. By never explaining the sword fully, ThunderCats forces viewers to question whether power is truly a gift or a quiet form of control. Section 5. ThunderCats was way darker than its time slot.
Why do you come here? I have not commanded you to appear before me.
ThunderCats aired at a time when most cartoons were designed to feel safe and predictable. Many shows were built around clear heroes, simple lessons, and endings where everything went back to normal. ThunderCats did not follow that formula, even though it was shown alongside those cartoons and marketed to the same age group. From the very start, the story is built on extinction. The planet Thundera is dying, and then it's destroyed. Almost the entire Thunderian race is wiped out in minutes. This is not treated as a short problem or a plot trick. It is permanent. The ThunderCats don't expect to return home, and their loss cannot be undone. They're refugees with no planet to go back to. Exile is another heavy theme. Third Earth is not their home. They arrive there by accident after their ship is damaged. They build the cat's lair, but it's a replacement, not a true home. The feeling of being displaced never fully goes away. They're survivors living in a strange world, filled with old ruins, dangers, and powerful forces they barely understand. Death also carries weight in this show. Jaga chooses to stay awake and guide the ship, knowing it will cost him his life. He does not return later as a surprise. His death matters, and his absence is felt. His spirit appears, but the loss itself is real and final. Compared to cartoons like He-Man or G.I. Joe, ThunderCats feels emotionally heavier. Those shows often reset after each episode. Characters rarely changed, and danger was temporary. In ThunderCats, villains return, threats grow, and victories feel short-lived. Many episodes end without true happiness. The world remains dangerous, and the future is uncertain. For a children's cartoon, ThunderCats trusted its audience with fear, loss, and sadness. That made it darker than its time slot, and far ahead of many shows around it. Section 6. Abandoned plot threads and unanswered questions.
What could his hands have seen to affect him so terribly?
There's no way of knowing.
There is a way.
ThunderCats built a large and detailed world, but it did not explain everything. Many major questions were introduced and never answered. These unanswered threads are one of the reasons the show still stays in people's minds. One of the biggest questions is about the fate of other Thunderians. We see most of the fleet destroyed when Thundera falls, but the show never clearly confirms whether any other ships survived. If other groups escaped, their absence is never fully explained. If no one else survived, then Liono and his team truly carry the last memory of an entire species. The show leaves this question open. Another major mystery involves the ancient spirits of evil. These beings control Mumm-Ra and grant him immortality, yet their origin is never explained. We don't know who created them, where they came from, or why they exist. Their power is vast but limited, and the reason for those limits is never made clear. They feel ancient, but their true nature remains unknown. Liono himself is also surrounded by unanswered questions. He's chosen by the Sword of Omens, but the show never explains why. Is it because of his bloodline, his destiny, or something the sword itself decided? The sword often guides him, which raises the question of whether Liono is leading or being led. Finally, the series ends without showing what comes next. We never see if the ThunderCats rebuild their people, defeat Mumm-Ra forever, or find peace on Third Earth or New Thundera. The story stops, but the world does not feel finished. These unanswered questions were never mistakes. They kept the story alive long after the episodes ended, forcing viewers to think, imagine, and return to ThunderCats again and again. Section 7. why these unanswered questions made the show better.
The sword lost the vision. Whatever that volume is, its powers are...
ThunderCats left many questions unanswered, and that was not a weakness of the show. It was one of the greatest strengths. Instead of explaining every detail, the series allowed its world to feel larger than what was shown on screen. This made the story feel deep, old, and real. Because we never learn everything about Thundera, the ancient spirits, or the true nature of destiny, the world feels ancient. It feels like history existed long before the first episode and would continue long after the last one. The ruins on Third Earth, the old pyramids, and the forgotten powers all suggest a past that cannot be fully understood. The unanswered questions also gave viewers room to imagine. What happened to the other Thunderians? Where did the ancient spirits come from? Why was Liono chosen to carry the Sword of Omens? The show never forced one clear answer. Instead, it trusted viewers to think for themselves and fill in the gaps. This approach made ThunderCats feel more mature than many cartoons of its time. It treated its audience as thinkers, not just watchers. Kids were not given simple answers. They were given mysteries to sit with and return to later in life. That's why people still talk about ThunderCats decades later. The story did not end cleanly. It stayed open in the mind. Fans kept discussing it, rewatching it, and questioning it as they grew older. The lack of answers gave the show long life. ThunderCats did not try to explain everything because real history does not explain everything. Some truths are lost. Some stories are unfinished. That choice made the show feel honest and timeless, and it turned mystery into meaning rather than confusion. Final section: why ThunderCats still hits different today.
Looks like your reign is over, monkeyin'.
ThunderCats still feels powerful today because it respected its audience, even when that audience was young. It did not treat children as fragile or unaware. It trusted them with serious ideas and allowed them to experience emotions that were not always comfortable. The show did not sugarcoat loss. Thundera was destroyed and it stayed destroyed. Jaga died and his death mattered. Fear was real. Danger was constant. Characters lived with loss instead of moving past it easily. ThunderCats also trusted viewers to sit with discomfort. Liono's struggle was not simple. He was not ready to lead, and the show did not pretend that he was. Mumm-Ra was not a villain who could be defeated once and forgotten. Evil returned, endured, and adapted. Unlike many cartoons that explained everything clearly, ThunderCats left space for silence and uncertainty. It allowed moments where the answer was not clear and the future was unknown. That honesty made the story feel real. Today, many shows try to explain everything or soften difficult themes. ThunderCats did the opposite. It believed that young viewers could handle fear, sadness, and responsibility. That belief gave the show emotional weight. And that's why ThunderCats still hits different. It was not just a cartoon about heroes and villains. It was a story about survival, loss, duty, and growing up too fast. It trusted its audience to understand more than adults often expect. And that trust is why its power has never faded. ThunderCats gave us heroes, villains, and a world full of mystery. But it also left behind questions that still sit with us years later. Some of those questions were never meant to be answered. And maybe that's why the show still stays in our minds. So now I want to hear from you. What's something ThunderCats never explained that still bothers you? And which cartoon should I break down next? If this brought back memories, grab your old DVDs or check the description for the link to the ThunderCats DVD set. Hit like, tap subscribe, click super thanks, and drop a comment below. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.